Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Amory Jane.
So, you might not be able to tell by looking at me, but I play Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you. Yes. Well, you might be able to tell if you look really carefully because I'm wearing my D6 earrings tonight for the occasion. I think there's this misconception about people who play Dungeons and Dragons, like we're all these virginal nerds who play in our mother's basements and we never get laid and I don't know, we just have no life. But the truth is that that's only partially true. I play in my own basement, thank you. But I want to talk to you about D&D because I feel like maybe some of you have never played. Maybe you've all played. That would be awesome. That would make my life easier. But I'm going to go ahead and assume that you haven't. So I want to tell you a little bit of the rules about Dungeons and Dragons. So in D&D, it's basically a collaborative storytelling game. There's a dungeon master, which sounds way sexier than it really is. Your dungeon master is basically the narrator of the game. They have the plot set. They tell you the basic details of where you are. They describe this fictional world where your characters live. And then they basically keep the rules and play all of the enemies, all of this stuff. And then everybody else who plays Dungeons and Dragons is a character. These characters are kind of like characters in a novel. So they have their own quirks. They have their strengths and weaknesses. They have a race. They have a name. For instance, I'm Miri. I'm a bard. I'm currently a level 10 player, which maybe doesn't mean anything to you, but it's kind of a big deal to me. Thank you. Yes, I've worked very hard. So I have this character, Miri the Bard. She's proficient in both the longsword and the magic wand. She's really good at diplomacy and magic spells, and she can pretty much talk her way into or out of any situation. She's based on me in real life. In Dungeons and Dragons, we also play with a lot of dice. The main one is a D20, which I have in my pocket for good luck. It's kind of small, so you probably can't see it, but, check it out after the show if you've never seen one of these. They're a sight to behold. So the D20 is the main dice that the characters use. What you do on your turn is you roll the dice for whatever challenge you come across. Let me give you an example. Your adventuring team is out, and you come across a chest full of, hopefully, treasure. You're looking at it, and you're like, how do we open this thing? It has a lock. So maybe somebody who's really strong is like, I'm going to smash it. And then someone who's got really good thievery is like, no, I'm going to pick the lock. And we're like, that sounds safer. How about you do that? So they tell the dungeon master, I'm going to pick the lock. The dungeon master has a number in their head. Let's say 16 is the number you have to roll to be able to pick the lock. The person goes, oh, okay, I'm going to roll. They roll a number, they add their thievery skill, and then if it's higher than 16, they get to open the chest. If it's not, then maybe that person gets to smash it open. But basically, that's how it works. You roll the dice through the whole game, every challenge you come across, and your dungeon master tells you whether you did a good job or not. Once you beat a certain enemy or you face a challenge and it's complete, your dungeon master says, okay, you get these experience points. And those are helpful because once you get to a certain number of experience points, you get to move up into a higher level of badassery. You're probably like, why is she talking about Dungeons and Dragons? I thought this was a sex show. Well, let me tell you why. So my very first night of Dungeons and Dragons, I had learned all of this. I read the player's manual. I had been practicing, my stats, figuring out how to roll the dice, trying to buy the cool colors, got my little miniature. I was really excited, super giddy. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. I got a nerdy group of friends. They're all really excited too. So we get together at my house. I'm kind of a hostess. So I've got hors d'oeuvres set out, melon, meat trays, cheese, and lots of tequila. And so, I know, they don't go together. I didn't say I was like a culinary expert. I just said I was a host. So anyway, everyone comes over, and we're all like super thrilled. They've got their bag of dice. They've got their little miniatures. The dungeon master's there with our maps, and we just lay everything out on my table. I actually light a fire because I'm like, well, I want to make it, more realistic, like the Middle Ages where there wasn't electricity. So I put a fire in the fireplace, and we're sitting around, just waiting to start the game. And the dungeon master's like, okay, let's begin. So there we are, sitting around the table. There's 6 of us. There are 3 of my gal pals, me, another of my guy friends, and then the dungeon master. He kind of looks and acts like Jesus. He's the one who rules the night for us. So he sets us off on this adventure. We're going through the woods, and we come across these kobolds, they're called, which are like these little lizard creatures, sprite things. And he's like, oh, you got to fight them now. What are you going to do? And we're like, we're going to fight them. So we start fighting. We start rolling our dice, and we're doing such a good job. I mean, these are like level 1, horribly easy things to kill. But we're just like, woo, we killed one. We did such a great job. And we're feeling so ecstatic about this, just barely getting a scratch. And we're like, man, we're a really good team here. We're very well balanced. We're like this well balanced yet motley crew. We've got, me, the human bard, and I do my magic spells. I viciously mock people to death. It's pretty cool. We've got a minotaur in the group. She smashes things with a hammer and yells a lot. We've got this warrior tiefling, which is like this horned demon chick with this gold bra, and she uses firepower. And then we've got this cleric who can heal us, and this deva who's very wise, and she, leads the way. And so we're just this really great team, and we're proud of ourselves at this point. We're like, we're the best. We're the best DnD people ever. We're so good at this game. We just killed all these kobolds. So we're excited. We're high-fiving. I pour more drinks, maybe like 2 more drinks. And everyone's, doing their shots of tequila. It was probably about that time, like after the 3rd or 4th drink, where the lines between reality and fantasy start blurring. Where I'm like, am I me or am I Miri? Am I my character? Is that a minotaur sitting next to me? I'm going with it. So, we're having a really good time. We're feeling really excited. We go out on our 2nd adventure. And after the 2nd adventure, the dungeon master's like, that was terrific. Yes, okay, each of you get 100 experience points for that. And we're like, whoa, high five, everyone. We're pumped. And so our dungeon master says, okay, let's go back to the inn and we'll recap. The inn is like in the game where the characters go. So we go back to the inn. At the inn in the game, someone orders another round of drinks. So in real life, I'm like, I gotta keep it realistic. I get us another round of drinks. Poke at the fire a little bit. Everything's going well. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We're all sitting there, and in my head, I'm just like, I feel really cocky. I feel really bold. I feel like I'm actually a bard. I'm kind of like the David Bowie of the Middle Ages. I'm just feeling really cool about myself. So I'm thinking, like, what do I do? I want to not have this game ever end. This is the best game I've ever played. And it was at that point that my friend Melody puts her hand on my thigh and says, this is really fun. Thanks so much for having us here. And it was really sweet. And then she squeezed my thigh. And I was like, oh, hey. I could be appropriate here and just say, oh, yes, of course. I'm so glad everyone's here. But instead, I am obnoxious. And I stand up and I'm like, Mary kisses the Minotaur in public. And the dungeon master's like, okay, you're like 5 feet tall. And the Minotaur is like 7 feet tall. You're going to have to roll like an athletics check for that. So I'm like, okay, Miri stands on the table at the end and kisses the Minotaur. So he makes me roll for it, and I'm like, whoop. I roll, it's pretty good. So I stand up on the table, and in real life, I don't stand up on the table, but in real life, I take my friend Melody's face, and I put it to mine, and I just start making out with her. And everyone's like, whoa, Steve Holt. So they're very excited for us. They're very excited for us. And pretty soon, next thing you know, everyone's like, yeah, the Deva's making out with the tiefling. Woo, roll for it. everyone just keeps rolling for it and making it. I think like the D&D gods were looking out for us that night, whichever D&D god is the god of debauchery. Totally looking out for us that night. And pretty soon we're just ignoring the rolling. We're just making out. Shirts are starting to get unbuttoned. Hair is getting tugged a little bit. It was at this point that I look over and I see the only male player of the game is looking at the dungeon master, and they're like, did we just walk into the world's nerdiest lesbian porn? What is happening? And so I actually walk across the table. I grab the Deva's hand, and then my friend Melody, the Minotaur, she grabs the Tiefling's hand and the dungeon master's hand and starts, going up toward the bedroom. The cleric is like, I've got to go. So, like I imagine a real divine cleric would, he just kind of eases on out the door. And the rest of us go upstairs to my bedroom. Yeah, it's getting a little hot. So we just kind of fall into the bed, the group of us. Clothes start coming off, pants, that's a word. Pants are getting pulled down. Everyone's having a good time. We're like, this is really happening. This is really happening. I think that I actually said to the dungeon master, hey, I forgot to roll for this. And he's like, uh-oh, you better roll for it. So I actually go, I get my D20, and I'm like, okay, Miri has an orgy with her adventuring team and a few of the attractive locals. And then I roll it. It's a 20. It's a critical hit. 20 is the highest thing you can roll. You will not miss. Whatever you say happens when you roll a 20. So we were all touching each other. Mouths were on mouths. We're on body parts I don't even remember. I don't know who was touching me. I don't know who I was touching. It didn't matter. We were all heroes. Awesome, awesome heroes that deserved to be pleasured in a big group. I think that I had my head between someone's legs when the door opened. And there's my husband standing in the doorway. And he says, looks like D&D went well tonight. Now, my husband and I, we had been swingers. We had had threesomes. We were in an open relationship. So he wasn't shocked to see this, but, well, okay, maybe he was a little bit shocked to see this. There were 4 beautiful women in his bed and a dungeon master just standing there like, what? So I get up and I grab my husband's hands and I pull him into this pile of girls. And just like earlier in the night, we put our minds together and we really concentrated on our teamwork. And we gave him a lot of pleasure. Now, around 4:30 in the morning, we start getting tired. So we decide to call it a night. And everybody gets walked downstairs and we lock the door, go back upstairs, my husband and I, and we fall asleep in each other's arms. That night, playing D&D, I actually got 400 experience points in the game. Yeah, it was pretty good. But I think in real life, I probably got more like 1,000. Thank you.